Now, there was a great observation and question here from Milan, community member. He sent a couple messages, but we can just kind of touch on this because this is a good point. Like there are layers to governance for Hedera, and he mentioned, we don't really see or hear about Breck McDowell, who is, the chair and also previous president of the board, making those day-to-day decisions. And he also brings up there are people like Tasker Generez and Ian Potter who have left governing council companies and are now independent board members on Hedera that aren't affiliated with governing council members. So there is this other, like we have the governing council, but then there is, I feel, this other layer above it, which is the governing board, which has people on it that maybe aren't directly affiliated with governing council members that do have decision-making power. And it does, and also too, like Scott Thiel and a bunch of these people. So there is this other layer that, behind this monolith that is the governing council, there's another, monolith. And it definitely, I think that what I've heard from the community is like, who's really pulling the strings or who makes the control or those different types of things. And I just wanted to kind of maybe just touch on that for a minute. Is like, what are your thoughts on the council and then the layer of like the governing board, these other individuals that are participating in kind of the day-to-day of the network?
The delineation between those two, I don't have enough insight to be able to speak on that in an educated way, to be honest. It's a lot more opaque. There's this aspect of transparency with regards to meeting minutes for governing council that gets released, but I think that things may be related to the board and how much actual control they have versus the governing council itself. It's a lot more opaque for me. And so I don't want to speak onto something that, I don't have enough education on to be thoughtful. It's worth exploring. I think it's worth understanding. And then ultimately, speaking to specific individuals, I think I'm not a fan of that. I feel like it's difficult to understand what those individuals independently, their feelings or their sort of decision-making or thought processes are. I think it is more of a systemic type situation where there should be a change in the way that everyone is thinking as part of that group. And then based on the way that they are thinking about a strategic change, that could result in maybe certain individuals being swapped out for someone else, or having them more adapt to whatever the overarching vision and change is.
That's a really great point. I think Milan responded here. I think you hit the nail on the head. We don't really know enough about that, and I think that I want to move on to another topic, but thanks for like taking the time on me with this kind of governing council stuff, because I think really what we're getting to here is, I know that people are upset about the HBAR Foundation. I know people are upset about this and that, and there's a lot of different issues in the ecosystem that I think are highly visible. But kind of to what you were speaking to is, again, there is this monolith that is the identity of Hedera, the governing council, and then this other thing that appears to be a great source of how the network growth is informed, that is the governing board, and it's very opaque. And I think that you bring up the word systemic, and you can make the argument that some of the problems that we see at various organizations that the community focuses on may trickle down from the types of decision making that happen from the top. So unfortunately, there is this focused structure, it seems, in Hedera that is opaque, that ladders up to a group of individuals. But the upside is that might be what's necessary to make a pivot if those individuals can do that. That's really the question. And really the only way is kind of bridging communication with those people. And I do like to see things in the meeting minutes of like the membership committee and stuff wants to do more work in kind of bringing individuals and other groups into the governing council conversations. I think what we're seeing is the Hedera ecosystem and HBARbarians really realizing how much power they have and working their way up that ladder, which I think is a really healthy thing. And I think that there's a lot of fair criticism. There's a lot of people challenging these types of ideas and structures. And I think that now it's time for the community to really focus on, you know, what is the governing council focused on, and who are the people on this governing board, and what are their values, and how well is it aligned with the business that Hedera has in this industry, and how aligned are they with the needs of their user base, the people generating revenue for the network. So I think that that's a really interesting thing to think about. I think that that's really where in my opinion, where the community should kind of steer their focus.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you on that. I think it's really easy to look at the certain foundation organizations, for example, and you know, they're sort of engaging us day to day in a way that does expose them to more criticism, but
Yeah.
ultimately they are beholden to many decisions that are made at the top level, at the governing council level. And, you know, I can only imagine it's difficult for them to be able to do certain things if the decisions that are trickling down through their organizations are forcing them to act or make decisions in a certain way. And I think with the role of the governing council, it was structured and is structured in a way where we have accountability, or there's supposed to be accountability to all of the
Mm-hmm.
organizations who are participating. And so, you know, when we have these really thoughtful conversations, that it's not just, you know, throwing garbage,
Yeah.
but thinking about this more strategically, um, you know, this is part of that accountability exercise. I think I see it as decentralization requires accountability, and having these tough discussions are part of